Hi, good afternoon. My name is Joanna Trotter. So earlier today, one of the first examples we heard was the Minnesota example in Minneapolis around the important role the comprehensive plan played in creating affordable housing and more density. And so I've been surprised through all the panels that we haven't talked about the fact that the city of Chicago is currently in the process of updating its comprehensive plan. So I'd just be curious, we've heard a lot about really great models in particular neighborhoods that can't be scaled, unfortunately, because of the number of wards. And so I'd love to get your reflections on the role the comprehensive housing plan might have in one, giving you the backing you need so that there is a policy in place, but also in ensuring multiple communities have scalable solutions so that we have one, more density and two, more affordable housing.
That's an open question. Okay, I think there's two questions that I would have about that plan, because I think it's far overdue, given the history of this city, for us to not have a comprehensive plan. I think the questions that I hate it when people ask a question back, but what I would say is, are all the people going to believe that in that plan, and is DPD going to believe in that plan? Because I think DPD, and I don't know if there's planning and development staff people here. If you are, forgive me. I feel like we can still be far too focused on one at a time deal making rather than comprehensive planning. And I think, God bless them, like it's still so hard to pull them out of that mindset. The other thing is, like, are we as aldermen going to believe in it? Because I do believe in prerogative. I believe it is the best tool to prevent concentration of power in even fewer hands, and also to make sure that our neighbors have a voice. But I hope that my colleagues, the other 46 people who aren't sitting in here, like, are bought into the idea of comprehensive zoning and policy-based zoning the way we're talking about today. Because if not, it's just going to be another thing that we spend millions and millions of dollars on, a really pretty glossy 200-page document that sits in a shelf in somebody's boardroom, and we'll be like, look at this beautiful thing that we did. Mm-hmm. So it's going to take real community buy-in for it to be powerful. And I hope that it is a powerful plan.
I'll add one thing to that, which is, like, what's a way to not have it be a plan? I think in part is to be sufficiently prescriptive, where there are things that city council can take and act on, whether it's specifically an ordinance that a department or the mayor's office is introducing, or enough nuggets where it's something that the city council committee on housing, zoning, maybe a combination thereof can take. Because I think in too many ways, even with I'll look back, like with the prior administration with DPD, like corridor studies, it's very aspirational and really not like bricks and mortar. Okay, I'm dealing in the current landscape with a particular zoning request. What am I to do here? It's like, oh, well, like maintain architectural significance. Here are a few spots that are significant. Well, like, why? What are some different uses that we would be really interested in? So I think that's something where we need that fine balance, as Daniel was indicating, of getting enough input from folks and buy-in where we're going to move something, but also something with sufficient teeth. And it's okay if it's not going to get the support of 50 folks or even 40 folks, but we do need something that's going to be sufficiently prescriptive.
I will add, if you've ever tuned into city council meetings when the commissioner of DPD has gone before the council, some of our colleagues have not shied away from criticizing the commissioner in expressing their feelings that they have not been consulted or brought into processes led by the department. And I'll say that I'm fearful that we might have a similar situation and outcome with this comprehensive plan, because I found out about the comprehensive plan via an email and via some materials that were sent to my office. I have not been invited to any meetings in relation to the comprehensive plan. And I'm someone who's very big on participatory planning. I say participatory planning all the time. I say 20 times a day. And so, I think that, to really build the support that you need in the council to move things forward, you have to include aldermen early. They have to feel like they and their communities are being brought into this process. And while I'm a big supporter of a citywide participatory planning process to come up with a comprehensive plan, I have concerns right now in terms of how it's being carried out.
Yeah, I'm going to share that. I have in my office the 1962 plan for the urban renewal of Lincoln Park, and it's fabulous to look at. It called for the closing of Lincoln Avenue, the deconversion of the complete closing down of Lincoln Avenue as a thoroughfare, the closing of Ogden Avenue, which did lead to the Triangle. But when you look at it with hindsight, some of the stuff in that plan was really stupid. So with all due respect to all the planners, the truth is that life is very messy. And I echo the comments of what Dan said as a new alderman, understanding aldermanic prerogative. When people rag on aldermanic prerogative, I ask, and who was it that built the expressways? Who was it that built Robert Taylor Homes and Cabrini Green and warehoused poor people? It wasn't a bunch of aldermen, baby. It was the mayor. And so even if I like the mayor, and I like the mayor, with good intentions, if you have too much power in one person's hands or one department's hands, that does not ensure a fair and good result. Power needs to be distributed, just generally, right? Power needs to be distributed. Zoning and development has to be done democratically with community involvement. And I guess my view of some plans, like my view of big corporations and things, when one alderman screws up, it messes up one ward. When the city screws up, it screws up the city. So I think we have to be very humble when we do planning, really humble, and ask the question, what could happen? And it has to be bad. Can't be good. What good things can happen? You can always cheer about good things, but predicting potential consequences that you can't think of, like a nationwide pandemic. I mean, we can't ever talk about those. We know about them. Excuse me, in advance. So I like the idea of a city plan. I don't like the idea that is being done so broadly that it is hard to take into account the circumstances of an incredibly diverse and beautiful Chicago. I tell you what I do like just while I'm here. I love the Invest Southwest program. I love its intentionality because that hasn't been there in the past. The intentionality that you are going to take the time to develop communities that have just received the leavings so often is very hard work, and I think it's really great. And that's a planning effort that I really do support.
All right. I actually think with that we're at time.
No.
So I really
Happy to talk.
One more.
I think we're happy to go over.
You got it.
What are the prospects for getting that deconversion ordinance to be citywide?
Ain't that the question?
It's a good question.
May I? Citywide, I think, is a challenge because Chicago functionally can feel like a dozen different housing markets rolled into one city. And a version of this that gets 26 votes, let alone the buy-in of 50 people, will be challenging. I think, and some of us were talking about, there are ways to start expanding it beyond just pilots. So say, for instance, as we're considering equitable transit-oriented development policy, the idea that the first place to start is rolling it into that transit-eligible radius around stations to say, hey, preserving density isn't just about what we build, it's about what we hold on to. And saying within TOD-eligible spaces, we're going to start applying that predominance of the block, demolition surcharge pieces. I think that might be the starting point. And to me, I continue to be optimistic, and my optimism continues to be thwarted. But I will say that does feel like something we could accomplish in 2022 with the right organizing inside and outside.
And I'm going to add to that in a different way. I think that, if I have any criticism of the panels, that we're on the north side here. And we're all in places that are dense already and are getting hot. Chicago has vast land that used to be filled with people living here. 5 million people lived in the city of Chicago in 1970. Now it's half that. Go fix that, is really what I think we really, because let me give you another statistic that you should know. There are about 900,000 residential pins in Chicago. 900,000. A residential pin is an individual housing unit. It's a little bit over 900,000. Of those, 40,000 are worth over $400,000, which means there's lots of affordable housing in Chicago. Lots of it. There's lots of room for single-family houses. You want those because they'll bring back some of the 200,000 children who have left Chicago schools. And when children leave the schools, you lose the parents who are the intellectual capital of the city. The people who are working. People want to have places to raise their families. So I think it's really important what we're doing up here in Logan Square and the First Ward and 47. It's really important. And another reason why it's really important is because hopefully it will push housing into areas that can use it, that can use more. In other words, if you slow it down over here, you may create opportunity elsewhere. And I think we need to do everything we can to make communities safe, that we can talk about all the policies that need to be done to reclaim the 2.5 million people who used to live here. And I think that would be the very best thing for our city, is to do that.
I'll just add very quickly. I grew up in a 4-flat. It was actually 3-flat with a coach house in the back. And I think that we have to begin to popularize, the family compound. We have to begin to popularize that it's a great thing to live in a 2-flat and a 3-flat.
Yes.
And it's a great thing that we have owner-occupied 2 to 4 flats. Similar to when Daley launched his initiative around historic bungalows, I think we should have a similar initiative at the city level. We need to enlist owners of 2 to 4 flats to become the advocates for their preservation. Because if in every single ward we can build a cohort of 2 to 4 flat owners that are saying, I love living in my 2 to 4 flat, I love being able to provide housing to my family and to my neighbors, I love being one of the most affordable options in the neighborhood, but I need support from the city, right, to be able to stay in my home and in order to be able to continue to provide housing to my family and my neighbors. I think that can be a powerful grassroots army to get some of these policies to go citywide. And you know what? You've gone up against Airbnb, and who did Airbnb enlist? They enlisted the small Airbnb, folks. So I think we need to be smart in terms of using those same strategies. Let's enlist the owner-occupied, those homeowners, those property owners. And I think, I don't believe in incrementalism as a virtue. I think we should always avoid incrementalism as much as possible. But I think sometimes it's the only way to go. And so if in this moment we can't take the policy citywide, but we can only take it to certain wards, and I know already of 4 aldermen that want to expand these policies to their wards, let's do it. And I think similar to the ADU, where the ADU pilot is helping to build the case for why this should be taken citywide, I think that if we can in the next year expand this policy in a strategic way in certain parts of the city, we can begin to build the case as to why it needs to be taken citywide as well.
Great idea.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for listening to our panel, and I want to thank each of our 4 panelists. Thank you so much for discussing what it's like to work on zoning and development issues from the vantage point of City Council. Thank you so much.
Thank you.